Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick-Taking Table. I'm Captain Taylor, and you might be wondering, why are you standing? You have a perfectly good chair right next to you. And it's because I did it. Oh my gosh, I did it. What did I do, you might be asking? Well, if you could, roll the clip.
Previously on
Taylor's Trick-Taking Table. Oh yeah, Happy New Year. Oh, my New Year's resolution? It's to beat the crew, every mission. That's right, I did something that no one's done before. I completed a New Year's resolution. So, does that make me better than everyone? Yeah, it does. And I do have to wear a pin to prove it. So, I will be wearing this, but you may be asking, does that make me better than anyone who's ever lived? And again, yes, it does. So I will be wearing this as well. And it's going to be tough, I'm going to have to live a life now of giving TED Talks and, oh, thanks. And, being a role model for literally everyone on the planet. So you might be asking, Taylor, if you've already hit the highest heights and seen Planet 9 with your very own eyes, where do you go from there? And I say, if I've been at the highest point, let's go to the lowest point, baby. So we will be covering today D Crew Mission Deep Sea, which is, I think in English, The Crew Mission Deep Sea. It's a game by Thomas Singh, and the hook is kind of similar to the hook of The Crew. Players will be trying to complete tasks. The tasks in this are a little bit different, and I'll show you that in a bit. In fact, when I cover what is different about this version of The Crew, I'll put a little symbol to kind of help if you do know The Crew. So let's go to the table and I'll show you how to play. The deck in The Crew Mission Deep Sea is the same as the deck in The Crew The Quest for Nine Planet. It's 4 suits numbered 1 through 9, and then there's also these 4 trump cards, the submarine cards in this game, numbered 1 through 4. Here we have the game set up mostly for 4 players. So we have the logbook, which will tell you about the missions that you're going to go on, the task cards, which are a huge part of a lot of the missions, and then each player is going to get a reminder card and a token for communication. Also, you'll deal out the playing cards equally to all the players. So at a 4-player game, each player is going to get 10 cards. Then you also have this captain standee, and that goes to the player who has the 4 submarine card. So all the players will look at their hand, and looks like Psyduck here has that card. So they will be the captain for this mission. Then players will go to the logbook and they'll look at the mission they want to play. Right now we're just going to look at mission 1. So I don't speak German, and all this doesn't make sense to me, but you have these symbols up at the top here, and this is important for most of the missions, because as you can see, a lot of the missions have this symbol. And what that means is, this number up here is kind of the difficulty of this given mission. So on mission 1, we are just going to be playing 1 difficulty. So maybe on mission 2, you have 2 difficulty, and on mission 3, you have 3 difficulty, etc. And things get kind of harder, right? But so for just this first mission, all we have to worry about is 1 difficulty. So what does that mean? Well, these task cards here, they all are split up into player count, so 3, 4, and 5 players. And since we're at 4 players, we're only looking at this number here. So these numbers indicate how hard this task is to complete. And all these tasks have different things, like maybe you're trying to win just the green 6, or maybe you're trying to win both the 6 blue and the 7 yellow. So how it works is, knowing your number of 1, you would try to hit perfectly that number of difficulty on the tasks. So, for example, if we're only looking for 1, we would discard this 2, and then once we see this is the perfect number, and we would take this task. So, coming back down to here, we will discard this 2 and flip this 1 task. Once you have the task or tasks for the mission, you can set aside the other tasks, and now players will take this task and try to fulfill it during the trick-taking portion of the game. So starting with the captain, they will decide whether they want to take this task, and they can pass if they don't want to or don't think they can win this card. So maybe Psyduck here doesn't think they can win it, and they'll pass to the submarine. Submarine will look at their hand, and they think, hey, I have a 9 green, and I don't have the 6 green, I think I can probably win it. So they'll say, yep, I'll take this task. So it goes in front of them. And so now you begin trick play. It starts with the captain here, and they can just lead whatever they want to lead. And before you actually trick play, players can communicate what's in their hand. So maybe Submarine, since they have the task that only matters, they're going to communicate. So they look at their hands, and what you can communicate is, you can communicate only things under a certain requirement. So looking at their cards here, They can't communicate anything about their submarine cards. They can only communicate about their other types of cards. And what's important here is the green, because they're trying to win the 6 green. So, when you communicate a card, you pick the card you want to communicate about, you put it on the table, but it has to fulfill one of 3 things. It has to be either the highest, the only, or the lowest of that suit in your hand. So as an example here, they could communicate about the pink. I don't know, they wouldn't really want to in this case, but if they did, they could say it's their highest, their lowest, and their only, because, as you can see, it's their only pink in their hand. For the green too, they could communicate and say it's their lowest, also not too helpful here. But what's super helpful is this 9. They can communicate with this 9 by putting it on the table that it's their highest green. So how they do that is, they put the 9 on the table, they take this token here, and they put it on the high part of the card. And so now, since they don't have that card in their hand, they can grab this reminder card and slide it into their hand. So now everyone knows, and they know, that hey, I have a card on the table. So they've just communicated before the whole first trick starts, and now the commander knows, oh, they need to win the 6, they have the 9 green, maybe I'll just lead with green and lead with the 7. Now it comes to the submarine. They're going to play their 9, and since they've communicated, they'd flip that, and they just put their reminder back on the table here, and then it goes to the magic conch. They are going to look at their hands, and they have that 6 green. So they're forced to follow suit because it's a must-follow game. And then Qatar will just play their 4. And now, since this player's task was to win 6 green, and they've won it because they have the highest of the lead suit, and there's no trump that was played, they'll collect the trick, and immediately they win. And so the whole team wins right away. You don't have to play out the rest of the hand. You just fulfill the task, you flip over the task, and mission complete. Let's jump forward a bit here, and now the team has beaten a few missions, and they are all the way on to mission 5. And so they go to mission 5 in the rulebook, and it says, whoa, difficulty 5 now. So just to illustrate a higher number, how it works is you flip until you want the exact number of task cards. So this is a 1, so they'll take it. This is another 1, so they'll take it. This is a 2, so they'll also take it. So now they're at 4, so 3 would put them over. So they would move the 3, and then they would just look for a 1. And they would just discard all the way until they found a 1. Then they would flip these over and allocate it next. Since 4 tasks came out, every player in the crew, if it was a 4-player game, would have to take a task. No one could pass. If only 3 came out, a player could pass. So maybe the captain took this, it comes, the 9 goes to the magic conch, and there's 1 left, and maybe Katara says they pass, so then Psyduck here would be forced to have that task. But since there were 4, each player is going to take 1. So now you'd play trick taking, and every player wants to complete their tasks. And there's a bunch of different ones, like this one says win those specific cards. This one says win no submarine cards, so that would probably be a horrible task for the captain because they have the 4 submarine, which wins everything. And then, as you can see, some just different, this says win no 9s, and this says I won't lead a trick with either pink or green. So what's interesting is with these tasks, those kind of have to be completed throughout the round, right? So if the player ever wins through those 10 tricks, one of the submarines, then it would end. So certain tasks do make it so you do have to play out the whole hand, but like the last one, sometimes it could end early. A quick note on a small thing about the tasks and the difficulty. So say you're looking for 4 and you already have 2 out. You're technically looking for a 2. So if this was on top, you would flip this and you would have 3 tasks and you'd be done with it. However, if this 1 was above it, you're looking for 4, you have 2. This 1 would come down and now you're only looking for 1. So you would actually then skip this 2 and look for another single task. So even though your difficulty could be 5, sometimes you could have only 1 or 2 tasks, and sometimes you would have 5 single 1 tasks. So that's how to start playing the crew Mission Deep Sea. If you were super curious and wanted to know a little bit more about what's in this deck, I'm going to cover and show some of them. It's a little spoilerish, but no big deal. If you do want to skip though, you can skip ahead to final thoughts. I'm also going to show a few more mechanics that they added to the game that also is super interesting. But again, if you don't want to learn about that, totally skip ahead. Okay, we're here for spoilers. So, some of these tasks are amazingly fun, and I'm just going to cover a few of them here. So you have your basic ones, right? Like I want to win these two. Some of them though, this one says, I win a trick with the value between, with the value of either 22 or 23. And then over here, you have some that are, I will win at least 3 5s. Pretty sure that's pretty hard. I will win at least 5 pinks. But some of them are super cool. So this one says, I will win 2 tricks in a row. This says, oh, this is cool. This is, I will win X amount of tricks, and you make the bid. This says, I will win, I think, less tricks or more tricks than the captain, and you can't be the captain. So there's a lot of really cool things in here, and I don't want to really spoil all of them, but it does wild things with the variability on what a task could be, especially compared to the base game. Also, in future missions, there's some symbols that are new. So you have kind of the same old compared to the old crew. You have this where communication kind of gets fuddled up, and you can't say whether it's your highest, lowest, or only card. But there's a new symbol that I think is really cool, and it's this right here. So what you do is it says tokens -2. So in that round, you're going to get all the players' tokens and put them kind of in the center of the table here. And then you'll remove the number. So it said remove 2, right? So in a 4-player game, you'll only have 2 in the center. And so now how it works is players can communicate, but they'll be taking one of these tokens. So maybe Submarine here wants to communicate. They'll take this, they'll communicate and do whatever they want, right? But now players can only communicate one more time in the hand. And what's cool is the same player can communicate twice. So maybe this player really needs to communicate, or maybe they're being selfish. But what's really cool is this new concept of having a pool of the communication tokens rather than each player just getting one. The other thing that future missions have, and this is covered in the rulebook, but also spoilers-ish, is there's timed missions. So this symbol here means that you have 10 minutes, you'll set a timer, and you'll have to fulfill this mission in 10 minutes. They say that the timed isn't required, as some people might not, like time missions, you can totally skip it. But things like this, where you have to complete this mission in 6 minutes, are definitely a part of later missions in the game. And that is the Crew Mission Deep Sea. And what a step up this is for the Crew series. And not just a step up in terms of quality or product or gameplay, because I think the original Crew has amazing gameplay, the way it kind of steps players into the missions and the cooperative trick-taking. I think what this does is it's a step up in terms of variety and complexity. Once you sit down and even just from the first few missions, see what can happen in this game and how crazy it can be, you know you are set for a much tougher but much more interesting ride. The graphic design is just as clear as the original Crew. They have the cards where the white part is in the section off the art, so it's super clear. I think what's cool is, even though I can't speak German, all the task symbology and stuff was so clear that I could intuitively just know what it meant. So that's a really good sign for how it comes across. And I love that the fact that they made this is the captain's token, it's not the commander anymore. It is huge, so you definitely know who the captain is at the table. The step up in complexity and variety all has to do with these task cards. There's technically fewer missions in this version of the Crew than there were the original Crew. I think it's 32-ish to 50 in the original Crew. But what is so interesting is it's almost like you have a million different missions just in these task cards alone, because the variety here is amazing. You're doing things from the original Crew task, where you're just trying to get a card, to trying to hit certain numbers or try to get more or less tricks than other players. The fact that the same mission can be played over and over and just have a wildly different experience because of these task cards is amazing. I think a stroke of genius of them is how they're doled out too. So say you have 5 complexity for the mission, you could get 5 1 task cards and then all the players will get one, right? Or you could just get a 4 and a 1. So then not every player would get one. There's a fascinating idea that is different from the original crew, where the passing is actually hugely important. I remember reading that in rules and being like, oh, okay, cool, you can pass now. But that is so huge. So in the original crew, there was a lot of weight on the shoulders of the commander, and I guess that's thematic. They have the role of being the commander, but they would always have to take a task because you can't pass in the original crew. But in this one, if you're the commander and they don't look good to you, you can just pass and kind of shirk those responsibilities to the other crew members. And that is, it's funny because it's almost like a weight lifted off the captain, but it's so crazy because you might be just pushing your luck. What if your crew members can't do it too? A nice touch about these task cards is that they're also balancing for player count too. I know the original crew, it might have been harder or easier depending on the player count, but now what's cool is if this task comes out, maybe it is easy at every player count like this 2 here, or maybe at 3 it's pretty easy, but at 4 or 5 it's just super difficult. So it's a nice thing that makes the missions more balanced every time you play at any player count. What I love about the variety in these tasks is it's not just which card needs to go where. It's now, oh, that person needs to win 2 in a row, so it's a win they need to win tricks instead of what sometimes. So you have more interesting questions and more interesting dynamics in between the 2 players when they're trying to capture certain things. One of them was, this player needs to win more than a certain suit than another, while that other player needs to get a specific card of the suits that that person's worrying about. So it's a lot more interesting back and forth and interplay between the tasks than just this person needs that card, that person needs that card. I just want to give a quick shout out to the 2-player game in here as well. It's no different than the original crew, but I just find it surprising that they don't list that this is also 2 players on the box, and I want to highlight amazing it too. What's awesome is the tasks aren't the only thing that add complexity and variety in the game. The missions are also there to add so much spice to the game. My favorite thing, and this is not too much of a spoiler because it's in the rulebook, but the pool of communication tokens. So usually I'd have it to where a player didn't really need to communicate and they kind of don't use their token too much, and then another player really needs to communicate. They wish they could say a million things about their hand. And what's cool is having that pool, you have players now having another resource, right? A communication resource that they're doling out between each other of who needs to communicate and how many times that person needs to communicate. And it's a really cool extra decision added on top of an already decision-ridden game. And that is the crew Mission Deep Sea. And if you haven't played a crew before, I checked out the first one before this. This is a little complex, and the other one's a better onboarding to the crew system. But if you love the crew and just want more, or even if you felt the crew was a little samey at times, check this out. It blows it out of the water. This is such a wonderful improvement on the crew. I think it totally gets the seal, so. And thanks so much for watching.